Give me something to believe in. Earth below me, sky above me, fire within me. Brought to you by UPRN Network. I'm Trish Moe, and this is The Missing Piece. Good evening. I'm Trish. It's Mo Monday. Again, it's Crazy Monday. We are broadcasting live from New Orleans, 105.3 FM and UPRN Radio Network. It's Monday again. And I want to thank Carnation, first of all, for sponsoring this hour, and all of our listeners as well for showing up. So my guest and I'm super excited to have you, Eric Erickson. He is a writer, host, award-winning filmmaker and actor. He was a journalist for the Chicago Tribune, Roswell Daily Record, numerous other newspapers and magazines, media outlets, co-authored nonfiction books on historical topics, the Civil War, Old West, and Viking culture, founder of Viking Dog Entertainment, a Los Angeles-based film and publishing content creator. And one of the biggest things that drew me to you was also raises money for wolf rescue in North America, which is a huge passion of mine as well. So welcome, Eric. It's very nice to meet you.
Thank you. When you run it all together like that, I feel like I've done too much.
I didn't even read. I only got through like the first paragraph. I haven't even read all of it. I mean, I started reading some of your books, and I read up on your latest film that came out, Truth. Is that correct?
Right, yeah.
And I'm like, man, I'm glad I invited you, because I was going for the wolf thing. I'm like, I opened up a whole other factor of coolness here. So I'm excited. Man, so you're, we talked about this. You're on the East Coast, correct?
West Coast.
West Coast. Yes. California.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So kind of tell us where it began, I guess.
I was born in a log cabin years ago. No, I mean, where do you start with that?
It's been 87 years.
It feels like it's someday. It's only Monday.
Sorry, that was totally a Titanic quote. Probably misquoted for that matter.
Just even growing up, I had this whole kind of approach where I didn't want to be satisfied with just doing one thing, So even as a kid, like my heroes were Renaissance men, Thomas Jefferson, Buckaroo Banzai, Doc Savage, these literary characters that were like multi-experience in all of these different things. So even as a young person, I was like, I'm not going to be satisfied just doing one thing. So, I mean, even in high school, I was writing plays and I was hosting radio shows, and I just wanted to be. I knew I wanted to be a storyteller, but I didn't want to limit myself as what way I wanted to tell those stories. What medium that I was going to be bolted to. So, it started with writing plays, and then I went to USC and I got into the film industry and started writing and acting. And it always was about the adventure versus staying on a certain path. So if an opportunity came up and it took me one direction, I was acting for a while and it wasn't fulfilling me. And I got the opportunity to start working as a reporter, and the Roswell Daily Record called and they said, do you want to come out to New Mexico and be a beat reporter? And I was like, yeah, that sounds like fun.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So my whole life's been like that. It's hard for some people to wrap their minds around that. They want to compartmentalize you, and it's hard to pin me down.
I get that too, because I have ADHD, so terrible. So I get really bored doing one thing. So when I started my own, art business, things like that, and then I do photography and I do this and that, personal training, all these other things. People are like, why do you have like 20 different jobs a week? Well, because I want to do all the things. and I can't just pick one. So
Well, do you pick it or does it pick you? I mean, isn't there a bit of that? It's like
me.
it pops up and it's like, wait, nope, you're
Yeah.
gonna come
And
be a
then I'm like,
photographer. You're
squirrel.
gonna come
And
do
then there's
this.
something else that picks me. So, and then I get run over by a damn train. So
Well, we're only here for so long. I don't ever want to wake up one day and be on my deathbed and be like, oh man, I wish I'd written that certain thing, or I wish I'd experienced that one thing. So, time is
and I
fleeting.
think that's what was really impressive also. If you visit your website, you've got a complete variety of, like I said, the workout apparel that also contributes to a good cause. That's a big deal, representing physical health and things like that, as well as the variety, I guess, of your, being a writer and artist and stuff myself. A lot of artists or writers stick to one specific genre or theme or whatever, their entire career kind of, and yours are pretty different. So and I almost forgot about your podcast. I don't know how I could forget.
Yeah. I literally just finished an interview. I just finished interviewing a cybersecurity former NSA agent, and we talked about cyber attacks in the dark web and anonymous. So I mean, again, there's like, so you're talking about, oh well, you did the wolves, so you did that. Well, yeah, I just got off with a former clandestine agent. So it's like, if it's interesting to me, I hope that it's going to be interesting to other people. And that's not just the podcast. I mean, that's why, like you said, it's, you're writing these different types of books. You mentioned the nonfiction ones that I've done. And then, then I wrote Ascension, which is like it's kind of it's been compared to like a Dan Brown metaphysical type of book about, the afterlife, but it's got adventure and it's kind of a Clive Cussler kind of attitude to it. And then I have a book that starts dropping next week that's a traditional Western that's just kind of the old school man with no name, Clint Eastwood page turner, and again, it comes back to, if it's interesting to me and there's a story to tell, I want to find the medium that lends itself to that story. So, and that's with the podcast too, is like every episode is something that's interesting to me, and that's a story that I think other people will find interesting to them.
And the name of your podcast is The Open Highway.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. Mm-hmm. I didn't know. And I will put that, I put that in the link is on my page as well. So, how do you come up with these, for your fiction ones? What's the inspiration behind them?
It's, some of them are explorations, like Ascension is a good example. I've always been fascinated by death, but not in kind of the weird thing is, like, I'm fascinated by it, but I hate skulls. So not that I hate them, but it's like some people are like, they adorn themselves with skulls and they use it as jewelry. To me, I'm just like, that's not me, but I'm fascinated by the cultural and societal way that we approach it, or we don't approach it, that we're frightened by it, or religiously. And so, that was something I wanted to explore. And the way that I wanted to explore it was in a fictional adventure book. So it just kind of lent itself to that, and I'm a big fan of the Old West. And it's like, well, of course, if I'm going to enter into that, I'm going to write in the classic Western kind of way. So it's just really like how it lends itself to the story that you want to tell. That kind of
well, and the reason I ask is because the different themes of your books obviously have a lot to do with, the characters, like you said, the metaphysical world or paranormal or things like that. So have you ever, as far as yourself, are you, clairvoyant, intuitive, things like that?
I'm not. I'm more. I always kind of joke I'm like Mulder. It's like I want to believe, but you really have. I'm very skeptical in like the logical base of it. But I'm always open to having that discussion, which I think is part of the problem in our society. Is even people that don't necessarily believe in everything, they don't open themselves to at least have the discussion
Right.
and entertain the ideas and have fun with that. You know, when it comes to UFOs, it's like, I want to believe, I think there's the more of a possibility that we're not alone than that we are alone. But I'm gonna look at what I see, and I want to analyze it and make sure before I jump on the bandwagon and be like, oh yeah, that's true. But like with the podcast, I try and have people on the show. I had I've had a couple people who, I had one woman who was a JFK conspiracy theorist, and I used that because literally it was the conspiracy that people
Right.
came together. And that was interesting. And I had a host of who talked about the Hill abduction, and that was fascinating because we got to get into the minutia of it and the science of it. And he had interviewed them, and he had tapes and everything. So I have synesthesia, which is an odd condition, which makes my world a little different, but that's not a clairvoyant kind of thing. But I think that definitely lends itself to my artistic outlook and how I interpret things.
What is synesthesia?
So synesthesia is when babies are born, all of their senses are intertwined. And then as you gradually get older, your senses break off. Some people, like yours truly, they didn't do that. So you taste shapes and you hear colors, and it affects the way you act. My ex-wife always used to joke, if chicken wasn't cooked properly, I would taste triangles, and I would be like, oh, it's triangle chicken. And she's like, oh, it's not cooked properly. Or I experience blue with certain musical tones, and letters have personalities. Like Jackson Pollock had it, and so it shapes the way you see the world, and even the way you're writing a sentence, it has to have a certain form. Yeah. It has to have a certain pattern, or else you look at it and you're like, it's just wrong.
Well, and I think that goes back a lot to our programming, because when I was in kindergarten, they could not get me to write with my right hand. I got my hand slapped with a ruler. Mm-hmm. So eventually I was taught to write with my left hand, but make it look like a right-handed person's writing, which to me, I'm like, that doesn't. So,
did you go back? Were you able to go back though? And eventually, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm curious. No. Did you go back to writing with your left hand?
I'm left-handed. Well, I'm ambidextrous now, kind of. So
okay, all right.
But I do write. I write with my left hand, like a right-handed person.
Huh.
Like I slant I don't do the. A lot of left-handed people hold their pen or pencil or whatever differently, or slant their letters the opposite way of a right-handed person. I slant my letters like a left-handed person. They do. I slant mine like a right-handed person, which they said takes a lot, like for your brain to, so it's weird. but things like that, because of society, we actually had to kind of reprogram ourselves to do.
It shapes who we are.
Yeah.
Yeah. My grandmother used to say when we figured out what I had, she's like, can we get you cured? And I'm like, why would you want to? I'm like, this is cool. Like, why would you want to cure me? Like, it affects how I see the world, and it affects how I am artistically. So my mom always laughed at that. She's like, we're not going to cure you. And I'm like, it's my superpower.
It probably is. That's funny. But that's what I was going to say is interesting about you, because I see that you are, highly intuitive and stuff, especially with your writing and your art. That's another Claire gift to just freely, because artists use literally a different part of it's a different part of their brain for that creative function. So that's why a lot of people, if they're in an accident or something and come to, and all of a sudden they can sing, or they can, they're really good at art, whereas they never had any interest or touched it in their life, So I had a guest on last week. She intuitively created art and codes that had sound, which is fascinating. So that when you were talking about the, you see like the chicken and shapes and stuff, it's kind of, all the same idea, because colors also every color has a frequency, every word has a frequency, so they're intertwined like that, but we're taught that it's all separate is the problem.
You're right. Right. So if you look behind me, I mean, obviously people who are listening can't, but you can, and anybody who watches, you can see the artwork that's on my wall. So I started painting about a year ago, and that's my mother's a painter. She's been painting for decades, and during the pandemic, she finally sent me a huge box full of paints, and she's like, "You need to start painting, or you're going to go crazy."
Yes.
And so I started painting, and the way that I paint is an interpretation of music. So that is, I listen to a lot of classic rock, but I know there's certain ones that I'm trying to get what's in my head through my hand, through the paint, and express sound through with the color that I'm hearing as well. So you're absolutely right what you're saying.
I forgot what I was going to say on that. Yes, that's fascinating. Have you ever animated your painting? Technology is fascinating. I do that sometimes too, line drawings and stuff I've painted. You can use these apps now to animate them to the music. And it's interesting what frequency artificial intelligence puts, connects with your own art. It's the most amazing thing.
That would be weird. I might look at it and be like, no, that's wrong. That's not the right sound.
Yes, it's both. I'm like, that's not where I was going with that, but that's cool and interesting, at the same time, because it's still my work combined with like a machines.
I'll have to try that. The way I do it, like right now I'm concentrating on the color, and then you can see the shapes, but it's also texture. What you can't see is there's texture to all the paints. So it's trying to bring together these different aspects of it, and then to put another one like someone like that, the sound, that's just a whole another level. That's an interesting way to go. Great. Now I got another project I got to work on. All right. Good.
So which is interesting, because what I started doing, in photography, I was like, okay, I would take a picture of something like in nature, say, and then I would paint it. And then I would add another medium to it and make it textured somehow, or use clay or build it up, and then I would animate it to music. So, I know I'm extra like that. So
no, I'm just like, how do you have the time?
So, well, I mean, it was stuff that I would go back on that I had done years ago, maybe even, and be like, that might be a cool picture to paint, or that might be a cool painting to upgrade, just so not all at the same time, which is also another interesting to see how you've evolved, in your art over the years. Absolutely. We had a listener, though, asked, which is a good point. I was going to get to this. In Roswell, I'm sure you have people ask this all the time. I was born outside of Roswell, so it's been a big part of my life as well.
Oh, wow. Man.
What the listener asks, what are your thoughts on the battle at Dulce Base? I'm sure you got asked about aliens.
Battle of Dulce Base. That one, I don't have a lot of. That one I don't know a lot about, so I can't really give you. I won't even pretend that I have an opinion on that.
Well, Dulce Base is in northern. Let me think about this. Eastern New Mexico, northwestern New Mexico. I don't know. It's northern.
Yeah,
it's not. It's not.
When
it's not
is that
Roswell.
In the 40s? When did that happen?
Oh man. Maybe
I'm knowing it by another name. I'm just not, because I know a lot about that stuff.
Yeah, and that's the thing, that specific battle was, nobody knew about it for forever. So, and as far as my, everybody knows my from chasing, as far as my past UFO issues, I'm the same as you. I'm a historical medium, so the fact-based part of me and logical part of my brain, every time, even from the time I was younger, when I would see spirits or get messages and things like that, I'm like, what? No, that can't be true. And I would have to confirm it numerous times in different ways, as well as have research to back it up and things like that before I would believe it. So I'm I'm the biggest skeptic on things.
It's funny. I do like the historical part of it. When it comes to UFOs and I love historical inaccuracies or historical things that shouldn't exist. Or I love to watch. I will admit, I love to watch Ancient Aliens, and there's always the part where I'm watching. I'm like, okay, well that's not true. There's no way. And then there's a few where I'm like, well, that maybe, or having to explain these things. Like I'm a big fan of Oak Island. I read the Reader's Digest article when I was a kid too, and when they finally when they bought the property and they started the show, like I was glued to it. I don't know what it is. I'm like, but something's up. And my ex-wife I'd be watching. She's like, it's a hole in the ground. And I'm like, no, it's so much more than that. There's so much more to it. Is it the Templars, or is it, American treasure, or is it the Persians or the,
and that's what's interesting with how I got so interested, because spirits and stuff and cryptids, whatever in my life, I grew up in the mountains, we're always part of my life. So it wasn't anything new or exciting. I mean, it was exciting. Not really, because it had always been there. It wasn't something I was searching for. It was just how my life was. And so once I started getting messages of historical events or accuracy or things that had never been reported. A show will come on. Spirits will show me this too. My TV will pop on in the middle of the night, and because I don't normally watch TV. So if something comes on my TV, I'm meant to watch it, or it's a message. And so it'll come on, and there'll be a part that I'm like, that's not right. And I'll know that because I've been shown it before. I've experienced it before, whatever. And I'm like, and so that's where it's exciting to me that all these things plus the history of stuff.
Yeah.
As far as
so wait, no, I'm not letting you off the cryptids though. What? Because I come from. So I was born and raised in Washington State, and so I was born with Bigfoot. Like Bigfoot and Sasquatch was like you grew up. I mean, the mascot for the Sonics, people don't realize it used to be Weedle, who was a Bigfoot. That was the mascot for the basketball team back in the 70s. Yeah, he was a big hairy guy still inside. And when you grow up in an area like that, you believe, because you go out in those woods and you get lost and you're like, totally, I could, even to this day, I'm like, of all of the cryptids, one of the ones I probably most believe of a possibility would be Bigfoot or something, a Yeti or a Sasquatch or something like that. So definitely it's one I kind of pull for. That's one I'm kind of like, I'm hoping that one's real. I'm hoping we get some proof.
It's kind of like the ocean. They discover different species that we've never seen before. All the time. Science does. Even in other countries and forests and stuff, there's other animals discovered that they're like, what is this? Yeah. I just read about I have a dragonfly tattoo. Dragonflies being one of the oldest prehistoric insects, giant dragonflies, because they said they might be coming back. And I'm like, wait a minute. This kind of makes sense though. Like, what if all these people saying they're seeing angels or Mothman or all these other things are giant dragonflies? Like, that makes sense.
You've seen it. Is it every once in a while there's a report you're from New Mexico. I mean, so there were always those reports of pterodactyls, modern day pterodactyls in the Southwest. There's the argument right there. It's like, okay, is it a people are like, oh, it's a condor. It's like,
but if you've ever been in a cave like Carlsbad Caverns in New Mexico, you'd be like, oh man, there's probably vampires in here, and there's like, I mean, that's another one of those things that you'd be there and you'd be like, okay, yes, something else probably lives here that we will never know, because there are lakes in New Mexico that they call them the bottomless lakes, so It's same with the caves, same with where I grew up. We had the cliff dwellings, so many caves, so many things that just aren't. There's even animals in New Mexico that are only in New Mexico, nowhere else in the world. Like the Gila monster. I had those in my backyard, and that's not found. I don't believe that's found anywhere else besides the Gila Wilderness, which is in New Mexico. So,
no, I didn't know that. See, I'm on the show and I'm learning new things. That's why I love doing the interviews and podcasts and the whole thing at radio, because it's like you're always learning something. There's a state representative in Oklahoma that I'm trying to get on my show, who was putting out a $3 million bounty on Bigfoot. But the idea was not to kill him. The idea was to be able to capture him alive, bring him in for testing, and then re-release within a certain amount of time back out in the wilderness. I'm trying to get him on my show because I want to talk to him about that. I'm like, where did you come up with this idea? How's it going?
Okay, and so as a person, I know you're like, oh no.
But that's why I do my show, because I'm just like, I hear these things and I'm like, I have got to talk to this person for an hour.
Yes.
And just
I
sit
have
them down.
been, I have weird stuff. So I've been experimenting on stuff, even by doctors and stuff, my entire life for multiple reasons. And that's how I feel. Maybe that's
it's not going to go well.
Maybe maybe it's like telling a kid they're going to get shots, and you're like, it's fine. It's not going to hurt.
Yeah.
It'll be fine. It's just a giant needle. They'll probably hold you down or go into the dentist or something. You're like, it's not. It's no bright lights, like strap you to a chair. Like,
no, it's good. It'll go badly. It'll go very badly. I've seen E.T. It'll go very bad.
So when I hear these things, as a person who's also very empathic, towards animals and people and everything, I'm like, so you want to capture this thing? Do whatever you want to it, and then release it just for your own curiosity. Right. So how would you like that? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, exactly.
But then people have a problem with alien abductions, and I'm like, and I have argued this because of my abduction experiences. People argue that there's some that have never had an experience that would love to be abducted and beg to be abducted all their life. And I'm like, okay, till you see the predator or something, you might change your mind, doing something you don't want them to do. But anyways, that's like, people ask me why the positive and negative experiences with that. And I'm like, well, you have to come to terms with it. If you can't stop it and you can't keep it from happening, and you can't, what I mean? So I'm like, I think of it as us dissecting frogs in science class, or people having cattle to farm and raise and eat, or like chickens for eggs or whatever, because farmers don't have an issue with their cattle. They love their cattle. They raise them for that. But it's not like it's anything against the cow when they're going to kill it to eat it. It's just, it's a circle of life. Well, and there's always something bigger on that,
Yeah. I mean, Neil deGrasse Tyson has the whole idea that why would another race be interested in us? How full of our ego we are to think that another race, another civilization will want to come here and deal with us. And I'm kind of I'm like, why? I think we're fascinating, and it's like we're a big reality show, and it's like you're going to come in and you're going to be able to find out whatever you want,
right?
But then you have the stories are they always seem to be one or the other end of the spectrum. They're either at one end of the spectrum where it's experimentation, and there's the whole joke about the probing and all of that, or it's somebody at a trailer park that gets kidnapped, or that whole thing. And then at the other end of the spectrum, there's the breeding aspect of it. That's their what?
Alienated cousin or something. No,
There
yeah.
you go. Yeah. And then the other end you have, there's the famous case from, I want to say it's South America, where the guy got kidnapped and they give him this beautiful alien woman to impregnate. And he's like, look at me. I'm the interstellar stud. So it's, there's never, I want the one in the middle where they sit down and play poker with you or something and just, have a beer and say, what's going on?
And I think that's what happens when you become more open. So even as, as a journalist and writer and artist and stuff, I'm sure you can understand when you put things in that perspective, the more open, just like I was talking about, some people just stick to one genre of music or art or whatever their entire career, which is fine if that's what they love to do, but then there's other people that start branching out and experiment. It's kind of scary with art to be like, oh, well, I'm good at this kind, but I don't know how this is going to go. Or I'm good at this fashion of writing, but it's kind of scary to branch out and completely change to a different one. So it's the same with anything else, in my opinion. Once I branched out in spirituality from just human spirits and was more open, instead of being afraid of ghosts and afraid of monsters and all this other stuff, being more open to it and looking at it from a different perspective, then more started to appear in my life. It's like, then it's law of attraction, but with cryptids. So
that fascinates, because then that starts getting the idea of the soul, and that starts getting the idea of what is consciousness. And, that's a whole amazing discussion to have, because there's the argument, like, do animals have souls, or are they conscious? Absolutely. Where's the level of consciousness in life? Is a dog truly conscious, or is it just reacting? Or you could go down to an amoeba. We don't know. We can't hop into somebody's with a scientific measurement. You can't sit down, you can't measure consciousness. Can you imagine if we could? Like, that animal's 75% conscious, or it's 10%.
And people do try to measure consciousness as far as in the spirit world, because there's energy that's just residual, that's not necessarily conscious. But then you get into all these things that imitate anything they want. I mean, you could argue that scientifically that a virus has a conscious if you wanted to, you know what I mean? Because it evolves. You could argue that, and we've seen superhero movies that they do.
Some of them aren't superhuman. Last couple of years, we have to wonder about just life in general.
Yeah.
But you could take it. You could almost, to take a dark spin on it, and I guess it's the writer in me, is to then go, okay, well, then as a human being, would we then look at a human being and say, oh, well, that human is only 80% conscious, or they only have an 80. Okay, are they less of a person? Then do we start being prejudiced against a certain group of the population because they aren't what we consider a fully conscious person? That's a dangerous path.
And I think, and that's why I try to tell people, because I think once they can relate it to a field they're so passionate about, as far as like paranormal, when you start relating it to spirits and cryptids and stuff, people are always like, Trish, why everywhere you go, you have all the evidence you want if you want. Or like my friends, when they're around me, they're like, something, you just have like random stuff like running around your house and fairies and all this other, that are witness to this stuff. And they're like, why does that happen to you? I'm like, well, for one, I didn't ever have a specific expectation of how a spirit should look, act, nothing. I wasn't, because I grew up, I was pretty much, living under a rock half my life. So I wasn't exposed to the outside world in that manner. But, so it's kind of the same with people, because I don't see spirits or cryptids or anything as different. I don't categorize them as different, like, races. I'm not prejudiced to Bigfoot or gargoyles or whatever, I just see them all as something, as beings, as
life
energy,
forms, like they're just life.
as souls to communicate with.
Okay.
You know, so, and I'm open to whatever message. I don't see the good or evil because anyone is a villain in someone's story. I mean, you know, I mean, Bigfoot, Harry and the Hendersons showed us that in what, the 80s. Yeah, he was like a
Yeah.
vegetarian. They only got mad when when trying to protect his family, you know, or tried to hit him with a car. It's the same with humans or bears. Nothing, spiders, you know, most things aren't aggressive until you poke them enough. So, so that's interesting you say that. But it goes back. I was going to ask about that. You have a big interest in Viking culture as well.
Yeah. It's
where did that stem from?
So my family's my family got very into genealogy, and so we did a lot of work. I mean, we're Norwegian. We knew that. We're like 2 generations removed from the old country, so you know we know that. But we got very into genealogy when I was young, and we learned a lot about our family tree. And as we discovered that we're descended from, well, I always joke this: if you've ever seen the show Vikings on the History Channel, that's home movies. My family's literally descended from Rollo, who is the character on the show, and William Longsword and the founders of Normandy. And as we got into it, we discovered that that's the Yingling dynasty, and then that they're descended from Kari and some of the frost giants. And it's just fascinating for me.
We've got it.
Yeah.
Like you just opened up a whole new can of worms.
Oh, well, think about, I joke too. I'm like, yeah, you know, did you see the movie Thor? And people are like, oh yeah, I love that movie. I'm like, yeah, that's a movie about genocide for me because he killed all the frost giants. Because I'm like, that's literally my descendant. I'm being a little flippant about it, but so it was very, I think the reason is because I'm an agnostic. I'm not a religious person. So I take my family and my family tree very seriously, because all of these sacrifices that have been made, all of these people who have died, all of these people who have struck out on adventures. So I have the opportunities that I do. Who would I be not to take advantage of thousands of years of sacrifices? So my 100 years on this earth are valuable.
Yes. And I absolutely agree with that. But I was going to ask you, so do you believe in reincarnation? Doesn't even have to be religious in any way. Do you believe in that people can have multiple past lives, not in the same family line?
I believe, and it's an ever-changing, as you learn more and you grow and you have experiences. I don't believe the same thing now I did 5 years ago. I don't know if I will in 5 years. It evolves. I kind of believe in the idea of the melting pot. I believe that there's something very special about the human soul. I believe in some sort of universal energy. I believe that there's something different about who we are and the electricity that goes on in our minds. And I tend to believe that when we all kind of go back into the melting pot, and we kind of get pieces of everybody else, or it shakes up, and maybe some things that don't need to come back don't come back. And I think that's kind of where I am. And I can't prove it, and I try to prove everything, but that's just kind of what it vibes with me, and it makes the most sense, because there's just something special about the human soul, and there's something different about the energy. And that's what Ascension is kind of about. It's about this idea of they cross over and discover how this system works a little bit more. And that's, you asked me earlier, like, how do you come up with that idea? And it was a way for me to, through fiction, explore the ideas that I had and kind of work them out in a fictional setting, and then share them with other people, spoon feed them a little bit, and be like, well, this, I think, the way it might work. You know, what do you think? You know, so.
And I'm excited to read that one. I just started. Oh my gosh, it's only on. I couldn't find it. Oh gosh, I forgot about Jurassic Galaxy too.
Oh, good grief!
Can I ask you about that one?
You mean me fighting alien dinosaurs?
but what is popular, right? Like even where I live, they have a whole dinosaur exhibit, because Sue, you know, the oldest Tyrannosaurus Rex, is in our town right now. So it's
really
themed. And I was thinking back, I loved Jurassic Park when it first came out, and I went to the Universal Studios Jurassic Park back in, it was probably 20 years ago in Florida. Which was so cool, but at the same, and now scientists are like, oh, we should really bring them back. I've read articles. They're like, this could, there are scientists arguing now this could happen. I'm like, let's not trip over our egos here and realize where we're at on the food chain. Okay. I mean,
speaking of bad ideas,
get over Bigfoot, and he's only like a few feet taller, apparently, than half the humans on Earth. So what are you going to do with a giant lizard? Like, man, I
think it's a bad idea.
I play men, really.
No. I apologize.
But that's how I always picture it, because women always have the motherly, like, protective mode. Where, like, even if you look at lions and stuff, that's what reminded me, because if you watch lions and you look at the lion pride, they're always making like the logical choices here, and then you see the lion, king of the jungle, and not afraid of anything. And so they literally, that's how I picture like these scientists and stuff. I'm like, are they just sitting around like, oh, man, I had the shower idea. So hold on, let me get a beer. And
there's no women around, right? No one's gonna stop.
Like, how cool it would be to do this. And no, that's not even how it comes about, right? because right then it's still illogical to everybody, and they're like, no, that wouldn't be okay. And then somebody's like, I dare you. And then men, you have to take a dare. I mean, really, like, that's not cool if you don't. So
no, that's our pride right there. You can't. Doesn't matter if you're 7 or 70. Someone says, I dare you, and it's over. It's just, you're done.
And that's how that will be the end of humanity. Giant dinosaurs again that eat us.
Well, it's been a fun ride.
Where can people find you on the open highway? Before we run out of time, I want to get your information out, because there's so much cool stuff that you do.
Oh, thank you. Well, the open highway is on all major platforms, Apple, Spotify, pretty much everywhere. So, you can find it there. We're also on Instagram, Open Highway Show. Viking Dog Entertainment is kind of the overarching company, like you mentioned. So it produces the show. We also do content. We release Truth and a couple other things. So Instagram, vikingdogentertainment.com. And then you also mentioned, we didn't get to talk about it very much, but we mentioned the wolves. And, if I could, like, really quickly.
Absolutely.
So wolves are very important to me. A few years ago, I got to go out to Acton and to Wolf Connection and spend some time with them. And it's a very life-changing experience when a wild animal allows you to be in its world. So ever since then, I've done everything I can to help. So if you go to thevikingdogstore.com or go to our other sites, it'll patch through. We have a line of wolf clothing and some other items, and 100% of the proceeds from those items go directly to Wolf Rescue. We have shirts and some other things, and some of them are kind of cool. I think some of them are kind of clever.
I think they're amazing.
Find your pack.
Some of the gym clothes.
So definitely, that's, even if you don't, like, it's really important with some of the stopping the hunt and some of the other things that are going on, and then keeping them on the endangered species list. And the situation in Yellowstone is another really important one that I try to do what I can to help out with. And so if you can help out, it'd be great.
About that worldwide, a lot of our listeners are from other countries and stuff. So wolves aren't located everywhere, obviously. And for obvious reasons, but as far as, you always hear about, all over the world, everybody's familiar with, saving the rhinos and the elephants, and which is very important. Don't get me wrong. I'm not downplaying that at all, but because that's just a, more well-known animal on the extinction list. But because a lot of people don't know that wolves have been endangered and abused and all these other things, killed, slaughtered, all. People
There's
don't know
bounties out on them. People don't realize that.
Yeah.
There's bounties out on them. They get paid if they shoot them.
There's even people in the U.S. that don't realize that goes on.
Yeah.
I've learned all over the place. So it is such a huge importance to check that out. Also, tell me about the movie Truth that you directed.
Truth is it's a dramatic film that I did a couple of years ago. It's been out now for it came out during the pandemic. It's about an accused war criminal who is offered amnesty if he basically fesses up for his part in a revolution in an internment camp during a fictional civil war. And it's got some twists in it. It really explores the ideas of be careful what you wish for, what is one person's truth. And it's not a family film. It's not a Disney film. I'll warn people there. It takes some very serious subjects, but it did really well in the film festival circuit. We were really, really lucky. We won a lot of awards. It actually went to a film festival in Russia.
That's what I was going to say. That's so interesting and ironic.
Yeah, they flew me over there, and the Russian government. This was in 2018, so this was before everything going on now. But I got to meet the Russian people, and one thing just take a second, like the Russian people that I met were absolutely amazing, and they are totally different than what you think, and it's a different situation than when you get to spend some time with them and talk to them and actually understand that they're people just like us, and that their government and those choices are different than what they're going through. It was a life-changing experience, and so I was really, really proud of it. Like I said, Rachel Alig is the co-star in it with me, and if it hadn't been for her, we wouldn't have been able to do this. It all takes place in real time, in one room, in from beginning to end, and it just pulls out the story. It's about 100 minutes, about 108 minutes.
Amazing, though.
Yeah. So I'm really proud of it. It's one of those things where it's like everyone said we couldn't get it done. Every person we ran in is like, this is impossible. Turned in the script to some producers, and the original script is only 60 pages long. And they're like, that means you have a 60-minute movie. I'm like, nope. And the first cut was 3 hours long. So we went in and we cut it down and really tightened it up. And it's really one of those movies where I hope people watch and have a discussion afterwards, and be like, these are the themes. So it's available Amazon and Tubi and all the different places, Blu-ray, DVD. There's links. If you go to Viking Dog Entertainment, there's links to it. And I'm just anybody who wants to have a discussion and is willing to go down some rabbit holes, I think you'll enjoy it.
So, since we're almost out of time, and you don't have to answer me now if you don't want to, I have some very philosophical connection, especially being on this network, because but people in mind that I know would love that and to have a discussion. So would you be willing to come back? Because I can have multiple people, I believe in StreamYard, that at once. So you could come back and answer our questions while we have a discussion about it.
That'd be amazing.
I think that would be amazing.
I love talking. Absolutely, that'd be fun. Especially if people had specific things they wanted to mull over, or Q&As. I love them, especially when people are like going back and forth.
We would really have to cut it back or make it like a 10 series thing, because the people. I mean, this is how it goes with everybody I know. We end up going on like, I'm like, my brains never stop. So
there needs to be a mediator or
yes,
somebody like a referee, someone keeping us online. No, that would be fun. That would be fun. Absolutely.
After my own heart. That's funny. Yes, because that's what he does too. That you met Joe before we came on. Yes, and that's what I love about this, is all the different, being able to respect and at the same time stop and kind of look at everything from a different perspective. And that's the amazing thing about movies and books and art and everything, that makes you think about something that you never thought about before, from someone else's, especially when you do like a cultural immersion thing, like in Russia. I studied in another country when I was younger, and it was the same thing. I was like, wow, nothing I thought was factual about that. We do that in our own countries, for that matter. People think that New York is just all city. I lived in upstate New York, and it's beautiful. It's little villages, small towns. People are amazing there. It's not the hustle and bustle of the city. You go to California, it's not all city, but
I live in the middle of LA. And there's deer, and I go to bed with, I hear owls when I go to bed. There's a winery across the street from my house.
Wow.
And I'm in the middle of Los Angeles. So that's preconceptions.
And people think that Kansas, we're all like little bumpkins. Well, okay. I mean, I'm not as refined as most, probably, so I can't represent Kansas very well. But it's not all, it's not all farmland. New Mexico's not all desert. I lived in the mountains there. So it's absolutely, even in our own backyard, how many people actually know? How I haven't even began to visit all the places in my own city that are fascinating to me, nor do I even know about half of them, because we don't ever look in our own backyard. So,
where are you?
I'm in Kansas. I'm in Topeka.
Oh, you're in Kansas. Oh, wow. Yeah. There's so much there. I've driven through that state so many times and stopped.
And I discover more and more all the time. I'm like, wow, aside from Superman being from here, I mean, there's so much history. I mean, even Civil War, things like that starts in Kansas. And, I mean, it's the heartland. So it makes sense. The West, Route 66, all kinds of things besides just Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz came from here. So, but I think we are running out of time. Joe hasn't kicked me off yet. He's probably. Yep, he said, say bye-bye. All right. So
there we go.
I'm going to have you on again after I collaborate with people to watch this, to watch Truth. I advise. I hope our listeners do, enjoy all of your, I'm almost through the first book I downloaded and going to be obviously diving into the other ones as soon as possible. So I would like to have you back on, but thank you so much for joining us. And
thank you. It was a blast. I had a lot of fun.
It was. And I hope, I'll list all of your information links below too. And then you can follow Eric on, again, what your link one more time.
Hit me up. I like Instagram because it's a friendlier place. So start your adventure at I'm the Angry Viking is my handle. And if you go there, you'll find me and you'll be introduced to my entire world. So the Angry Viking. Try it there.
Okay.
Yeah, that's me.
All right, Eric. Well, thank you so much. And listeners, thank you for joining us. Good evening.